Every flower farmer has just a mess of crates somewhere, right? Hey everyone, it's Brittany from Green Bee Flowers. So we're gonna do a farm update video today. March is that time of year where you have to get yourself going on the right course to get yourself successful the whole rest of the season. So we're gonna talk about some stuff today that's going on at the farm. We are gonna do some planting. We are going to have a look at all the different perennials and things like that that are starting to come up, because time starts to move really fast now, and if we don't remember to record these moments, we're gonna miss it. So hope you enjoyed today's video. Come on, let's go. I think these grew like 4 inches overnight. Oh, tulips are my fave. I love tulip season. Such a cheerful way to start off the flower season. It is the first full week of March, and everything is exactly looking in the greenhouse how I was expecting it to look, which means that we are hopefully gonna have anemones for Easter, which is in about 3 weeks. The Rosa Chiaros and the Center Neros are starting to really flush out, and I am fairly certain by next week they'll probably start pushing up buds. The elegant salmon ranunculus that was from last year, that is the furthest along, surprisingly enough. And the other stuff that's gone in is in good shape for Mother's Day blooms. It's honestly, it's wild. I'm super excited, so thankful. There are a lot of plants in here, and we up-potted a bunch of larkspur and feverfew again this morning. Tomorrow I'm going to start potting up snapdragons, and then within the next week and a half to 2 weeks, those snapdragons are going to get transplanted in here, and that's going to be about another 500 seedlings of just snaps that are going in here. I also have Buplorum and Bells of Ireland that are going to be moved into the greenhouse as well. So there's a lot to do. We're on track, and it's nice this year to feel like we're rolling along. My brain isn't split up between running the store and getting the farm going, so it's nice to be able to just throw my energy into one thing, and trust that my staff are doing a great job of running the store. So here we are. Really excited.
This is mostly just testing.
So some of you might notice as I'm planting the larkspur here that the seedlings, some of them are quite small. Look, she got a little baby root. Because we're putting these into the greenhouse, these are coming actually directly from downstairs into from the grow room right into the greenhouse. I tend to not overthink seedlings that are not going outside, right? Yes, some of transplant shock is due to like the change in light levels, but a lot of times it's actually because of the wind, especially when you're growing on a farm. And so since we're in the hoop house and there's, you know, the air movement is essentially just between the doors being open right now, I don't have to worry as much about crazy transplant shock. And honestly, the stuff that I put in at the beginning of the week didn't go through any transplant shock at all. So I'm really thankful about that. And part of that is just because the temperature in here, the light conditions in here, even though it's actual sunshine as opposed to UV grow lights, is about the same. So the seedlings are not as stressed out as they would be when I plant these outside. So like we have trays of Nigella and Orlea and more trays of larkspur at home that will be spending some time acclimating in the little greenhouse. But that's because those are going to be planted on the main part of the farm for like later blooms. Whereas these ones we're pushing, we want earlier blooms from these. And so just, you know, micromanaging those conditions in the greenhouse itself makes it a lot easier for the plants, and they're not going to be going through as intense shock. They recover quicker, and for some of them, the smaller I plant them, the happier they are, because larkspur too doesn't like to have its roots jostled very much. And so the smaller the plant is when I put it in, the happier it tends to be. So the tulip field has really jumped into action these last couple days. There's about 8,000 tulips in here. These were supposed to be for Mother's Day. I do think it's going to be really interesting over the next couple years as we learn and change how we plant and what crops we plant to kind of plan for holidays, right? So in Southwestern Ontario where I am, I mean, and I guess this is for everybody, Easter this year is early, right? So just judging by, like, so for instance, the pink impression tulips and the mango charm tulips that are right there, if we keep having the weather that we're having, some of those varieties are going to be available, like ready to pick for Easter this year, which is like a solid few weeks earlier than last year, right? Their bulk of the tulips that we picked last year, we picked most of those kind of late April, kept them in the cooler so that we would have them for Mother's Day. This year I think is going to be very different. We're going to see a lot of them available, growing, blooming a lot sooner. I'm also expecting to see earlier daffodils this year. And I'm expecting that the ranunculus are probably going to bloom in the greenhouse, you know, mid-April. They'll keep going for a couple weeks. But, you know, with this warm weather that we're having, with climate change, right? So for those of you who don't know, the Farmer's Almanac released a change, or was it the National Weather Association, something. Anyways, growing zones have changed, right? So because this has happened, it also means that, you know, the cold part of our season is going to be a lot shorter, which is great for getting, you know, a sunburn in the first week of March, but not great when we're thinking about, you know, crop planning for the future. So this is something like I think all growers are going to have to, especially field growers, are going to have to start thinking about when we're planting and, you know, getting crops ready to go. It may mean that for us, we're going to be doing a lot more crated tulips where we can keep them, you know, in the cooler over the winter, bring them out, you know, and kind of push them to start when we want them. And that's legitimately just a change that we're going to have to figure out how we're going to deal with. But it also is going to mean that things like the larkspur and the feverfew, those plants that I usually have ready to go for that like awkward part of early July where there are no other flowers, we're going to start to see those bloom in June. And I don't know yet whether that means we're going to be able to like shift some of our plantings earlier, because the reality is that last frost for us is still not going to be until, you know, the first or second week of May, even with a shift in growing zones, which means that my, you know, tender annuals, things like my zinnias and my sunflowers and my dahlia tubers aren't going to be going into the ground anyways until middle of May. And I don't think that's going to give me earlier blooms on any of that kind of stuff. So it may mean that we're going to be working with more season extenders in the future. It's going to be really interesting to see how this kind of shifts and changes. And it may mean that some of the crops that we specialize in the years forward shift as well. Just thoughts. Sometimes I like to walk through the tulip patch and have thoughts. So there's that. But the tulip patch, like it's coming along. We're gonna have a ton of tulips in April, which is great because we have a whole section of spring subscriptions now, which are gonna feature like our spring flowers. And Mother's Day is going to be much more heavily snapdragons, ranunculus, anemones loaded, and nobody's gonna complain about that because everybody loves a ranunculus and an anemone. Every time I say that, I think about Finding Nemo. Just me? No? Okay. So another thing I don't know if I showed you guys is we actually have holly bushes on the farm now. We did a talk last fall with one of the local horticultural societies, and these were generously donated to us from one of the farmers who was a part of that talk. They were moving and selling their farm, and they gave us the holly bushes. So we have berrying holly and then one without berries. That one over there is having some transplant shock issues, but it'll come back. You actually need to have, you know, both of them in order to get the berrying holly. And Nick is propagating this holly bush. So over the next couple years too, we're gonna, you know, fill this row out a little bit more with holly, and then eventually this side of the farm. So here this year is where our sunflowers are going to go. Now, I use sunflowers as kind of a break-in crop. So every time we break in new ground, typically we'll put sunflowers in that location. Sunflowers are a really good, easy crop for just getting some basic nutrients down in the soil. This section of crop, or the section of field here, is one that we haven't grown in for the past 2 years, because this whole field is cash cropped, or was cash cropped before we came in here. I wanted to leave the weeds, to let the weeds do their beautiful, wonderful thing, right? And so now as we are continuing to grow the length of the farm, this section here is actually going to be where our sunflower patch is this year. And I really honed down on the varieties of sunflowers that we are growing. So we are growing Pro-Cut Gold, Pro-Cut Plum, the Vincent variety, and then I think Pro-Cut Peach. So it's very condensed from like having 65, no, we've never had 65, but like 10 to 15 different varieties of sunflowers. The reality is we just don't need that many, and over the years I've taken better inventory of what I know we will sell, what's been popular. You pay attention to what goes at the farmers markets, right? So then like on the other side here, I have yellow flags somewhere back in there. They're kind of like there-ish. Those yellow flags is kind of where we're going to extend out. So it's about another 30 feet. I really wanted to push the field out to match the space that we were losing at the Green Door Gardens plot. Because essentially from here to the end is going to be our dahlia field this year. I was really happy with how the dahlias stored in the cooler, specifically the ones that were grown in this field. It's a slightly different soil makeup here. It's a little bit more sandy, and so that actually was really great for dahlia storage. The tubers cured beautifully, and then it was actually really easy too because the soil didn't clump all up around the tubers. The other farm was really wet all year, which part of the reason why we had such a awkward crappy dahlia year. But yeah, so like moving all of that onto this farm, one, it's going to all be in the same place this year, which is really great. The second thing is that's a huge amount of growing space, right, for the dahlias. I know we're deciding which way we want to grow them. I personally want the rows to go this way. Nick wants the rows to go this way. But I think about, dividing them by variety, and I just think it would be easier for us to do shorter rows in order to accomplish that. So right behind me are the rows of delphinium. A couple days ago, these were just packed full of foxglove that had reseeded there from 2 years ago. So it was not in these beds last year when we planted. So Caitlin and Teresa went through and yanked all of the foxglove out earlier this week. And I'm really excited because now the delphinium has a chance to really come back, and it's looking really healthy. So I'm gonna show you some of this because I love delphinium. It is one of my favorite crops that we grow on the farm. They're just such beautiful colors, and they're so wonderfully iridescent. And it's a crop that really does kind of keep pumping out those blooms through the whole summer. So I eventually would like to have like 4 or 5 full rows of delphinium. It's one that we use in the store all the time, and it's just such a beloved flower for so many people. I really think it's one that is undergrown by cut flower farmers. Everybody's always so focused on like the peonies, right? Everybody wants the peonies. Nah, man, delphinium's where it's at. So we're starting to see a lot more of the sprouts coming in, even right in here. A couple days ago, these were having a really, really hard time. And it was because the foxglove had completely taken over this whole row. So now there's lots of new growth in here. This will be a nice full row this upcoming season. I'm so excited. Well, wildly enough, we also had Dara survive the winter. Dara is normally an annual here, but there's quite a few spots here in the row. There's a couple down here where we've had them survive. Haven't entirely decided how I feel about that yet. It's exciting, but slightly concerning at the same time. Now, this beautifully green row right behind me here is larkspur that overwintered. I think it's a combination. Don't know. This row didn't bloom last year, so I'm actually really happy to see that it's coming back really nicely. I will have to go out here in the next couple days and start weeding out some of like the creeping little weeds that are in here. We have a lot of, I don't know what it's called, but it has like little white flowers on the top. I weeded a whole bunch of it out of the greenhouse too this week. But this is exciting. A couple more weeks, probably about 2 more weeks, and we'll be starting to net this because it's gonna be putting out shoots sooner rather than later. Now, because it's March on the farm, the other thing I'm starting to keep my eyes out for are these wonderful little buds on our peonies. You can see there's a whole bunch kind of starting down in there. Not quite ready for these, so I'm going to cover them back up with straw. Helps keep that soil cool down under there. So that is the farm this spring. That's what stuff is looking like, and it's a bit of a different year for us. Like I said in my last video, I am like just so much more excited and so much more organized. I'm not in the process of opening a store around Easter. And I think because we're not doing that, I've been able to kind of set ourselves up for success on the farm this year. And really am looking forward to what is coming for this season. So that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, you're curious to know about why we do things the way we do, any infrastructure questions or anything like that, drop those comments below. If you liked the video, please hit that like button, the thumbs up, whatever you want to call it. And if you want to follow along on our flower journey, please hit the subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I hope you have a great day. Bye.